Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything is Energy. Welcome to the weekly astrology forecast for Sunday, April 26th through Saturday, May 2nd, 2026. The theme here this week is mental acceleration and grounded clarity. And it's worth noting and remembering that this week unfolds in the immediate wake of Uranus entering into Gemini. I did a previous podcast on that. Check it out if you would like to. We can likely feel this definitely through this week. And, one of the things that we might be noticing is that our pace of thought might quicken, conversations might carry more charge. Potentially, insight might come more quickly, but if we are not grounded, we could also be overwhelmed. So there's a strong emphasis on Mercury, Venus, and Mars this week. They're all interacting with Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, and the nodes. So this means that our mind is active, communication is meaningful, action is shifting, and alignment is being refined. So while this week is quick, I'll get to the details next. It's not necessarily an invite to slow everything down. It's an invite to stay grounded, to stay rooted as things speed up. So let's start with Sunday, April 26th. This is a layered and highly active day. This is a day of insight and potentially overextension if we're not grounded. So in the early morning, we have Mercury quintile to Pluto. This is a powerful moment of clarity. Pluto is going to invite us to be able to see the truth beneath the surface and to gain insight into situations and maybe even to get a deeper understanding of something that was previously unclear. So this is a really excellent aspect for reflection and for awareness. Later on that day, we have Sun quintiling Jupiter, and this is really sweet. This is kind of a subtle expansion energy. This is where we can get some confidence and our ability to take a wider perspective can expand. And in this aspect is going to help us to expand, but in a refined, not overwhelming way. And if there's a name of the game to this week, it is to be in the flow, but to be first and foremost centered and rooted and grounded. And the final aspect in the evening of Sunday is Venus sextiling Neptune. And this is going to kind of soften our emotional field a little bit. There might be some energy of compassion that comes through and openness and creativity. And so this is a really wonderful way for us to kick off this week. Insights are coming through, but we're also kind of just being subtly opened to this sense that we are not alone and that there is more than simply our individual person in this collective field. We also have, oh geez, there's two more aspects. Sorry. We also have in the evening Mercury squaring to Jupiter, and this is where we're going to get some tension. So the squaring of Mercury to Jupiter, we could potentially have the mind overact or become overly optimistic or overly thinking something or overly committing to something. So this is where I'm going to suggest rooting and clarity and discernment is a good thing here. Not every idea needs immediate action. There's this sense of watching the flows of energy and maybe even asking the universe for a sign that this is the right thing to do. It doesn't mean don't do anything. It just means don't willy-nilly go charging off into right or left field, full throttle ahead. Take some steps, see how it feels, see how you continue to feel. We also have Venus semi-square to Jupiter really, really late on Sunday night. And so our emotions now may mirror this, the previous aspect of Mercury squaring Jupiter, because squaring and semi-squaring are similar. So our emotional body, we might feel that we're stretching beyond our capacity. This is an important aspect to stay grounded in what is real. And Venus is semi-squaring Jupiter. There's also this call for any expansion to truly be balanced, to truly be harmonious, excuse me, for everyone and for everything. So also to realize that we are a part of the whole. So if we're excited about something, that's great. But to just kind of wade in a little bit slowly on Sunday and into Sunday evening. On Monday, April 27th, we have some alignment returning. We only have, after a big day on Sunday, we only have one aspect on Monday, and that's just before noon. And that's going to be the sun sextile to the North Node. This is a really beautiful moment of, I'm going to say, quiet alignment, because the North Node is definitely subtle energy. And the North Node is going to kind of help our identity and our direction and our soul's purpose come into this gentle sense of coherence. Coherence in the 3D world. Because if the North Node is why we're really here, one of the things we as humans grapple with is, why am I here? Why can't I put it on my resume and figure it out, you know? And the sun is all about the manifestation in the 3D world. So this is going to be a nice kind of meshing of subtle energy and not so subtle energy, but there might be this sense of quiet confirmation or grounded yes. The energy on Monday, if it's right, it doesn't necessarily need to be loud. It might feel very meaningful to us inside. It might feel palpably, energetically strong, but it doesn't about who can shout the loudest. Moving on to Tuesday, April 28th. This is a day of connection and expression. We have two aspects here today, and they're both, one of them is in the early afternoon. Venus is trining Pluto, and this is a really beautiful emotional and relational and collective aspect. You know, Venus, as I mentioned in the Uranus into Gemini podcast, Venus also just went into Gemini. She's only going to be there for about a month, but Venus and Gemini, when it's connecting with Pluto and Aquarius, this is bringing depth into our communication. It's bringing depth into our connections, both interpersonally as well as just collectively. So we may experience meaningful conversations here today or around this time, Tuesday. Maybe also just this sense of being, just needing to express ourselves honestly, emotionally, to speak our truth. And we might also be able to have a deeper understanding of our relationships, where there's this surface level of what's going on, maybe what's always gone on. Maybe we can start to see the deeper stories, the why beneath some of our relationships. And this is where connection becomes truly transformative. And in the evening on Tuesday, we have Mercury semi-square to the North Node. So this is going to be, you know, especially after Uranus just moving into Gemini, Mercury squaring the nodes is going to be offer a subtle mental recalibration. So we may notice that we're kind of questioning our direction a little bit, or maybe I would say it's really probably about refining our thinking instead of recalibrating, as in I'm going the wrong way, I have to make a hard right. It's kind of like, how can I fine tune this? How can I make an adjustment? This is about making an adjustment versus having confusion and needing an entire course correction. On Wednesday, the 29th, this is one of the more activated days. And this is kind of, there might be a little bit of restlessness here. This is a day of adjustments. It starts off early in the morning, around 7. Mars is going to be semi-square to Uranus. Uranus is on fire right now, just entered into Gemini. And Mars is going to kind of inject this surge of needing to act energy as it does. So we may feel a little bit more reactive. We also just may simply feel ready for change. And, you know, this is actually, Mars is going to kind of help light a little bit of a spark of Uranus into Gemini, because it's going to invite us or make us want to take action. And it's not a bad day to take action. It's just a day to remember that we're not simply reactionary creatures, excuse me. We are creative creatures, and everything we say and do and vibrate about carries meaning, and it carries weight. So this is just a day to, an aspect to kind of just say pause before acting impulsively. We also have midday sun semi-sextile to Saturn. And that's going to bring a grounding influence. Saturn, even though people think it's the restrictive planet, it's a karmic planet. Saturn really wants us to ground things down into reality so that they can stabilize and we can create things that are lasting. And so here, the structure is going to start to become available to us. With the semi-sextile aspect, we're going to have to choose it. It might not just fly in a magic carpet and be right there, but it's going to be something that's going to feel noticeable and maybe a little bit more obvious as to how we might say yes to something or take action on something, or even just write down in a notebook a plan that is becoming more concrete. The final aspect on the 29th is around 9:30 in the evening, and that is Venus squaring the North Node. And with Venus squaring the North Node, we may start to question if things are aligned for our collective sense of justice and balance, and for our relationships to make sure that things feel aligned for the long term, that we're not just doing the same old thing that we always do. So this is a gentle invitation for a subtle refinement here of our energies. And if some of the themes are that have been running for a while are getting off of autopilot and just doing things because it's what we always do, then taking those moments of, I usually just react this way and I do this because it's what I've always done, but it doesn't feel good. So why don't I just slightly shift and do something different? That's a little bit of the energy of Wednesday. And as we move into Thursday, April 30th, it's a quieter day. I often think of these days as integration days. If we don't have any major aspects, this is just a day to let the nervous system settle a little bit. There's a lot of movement that, started on Saturday, the 25th, with Uranus into Gemini, and Sunday was a big day. Wednesday was certainly a big day. There's a lot of energy this week. So Thursday is kind of a day to just take a deep breath and be with everything that's happening. Friday, we have several more aspects happening where there's two of them actually. And Friday is really a day of grounded communication and healing. And this is because Venus is sextiling Saturn. Both of the aspects are happening in the afternoon. And this is going to, as Venus sextiling Saturn, it's going to return a sense of emotional steadiness. And this is going to support, grounded connection, our ability to make authentic commitments and be reliable. We also have Mercury conjunct Chiron. This is around 4. It's a couple hours later. And so when Mercury conjuncts Chiron, it's going to offer a really lovely time for healing via communication. And maybe it's about actually physically expressing something that feels true, but a little bit vulnerable. But maybe it's also about recognizing a pattern that we've been running that we can shift a little bit and upgrade. Maybe it's about speaking or writing or honing in on a truth that brings some release. Here, I will just say communication in all its forms, verbal and nonverbal and energetic, all of that can become medicine on Friday. And this brings us to Saturday, May 2nd. There's just one aspect. Saturday, May 2nd is a day of empowered movement. And this is because early in the morning, around 7:30, we have Mars quintiling to Pluto. And this is a subtle aspect. Mars is definitely a personal planet. Pluto is the outermost planet, arguably. Um, but when Mars and Pluto are connecting and flowing energy, which is what a quintile is, there's this sense of focused action. Imagine if Mars and Pluto get on the same page, inner strength, intentional movement, not forceful, but precise and powerful in its precision. So it's not just raw, because that's how Mars can kind of in its shadow side be, right? Mars quintiling Pluto is just like understanding Pluto knows subtle energy, one simple shift, and one thing that's really about intentionality, precision, getting it right on the money can really land it. So this is where power becomes aligned. So, in summary, this week is going to bring some mental activation, potentially some rapid insights. Also, it's a week of communication and it's a week of expressing our mental and emotional truths. It's okay if things feel a little bit unsettled this week because we're moving through a week of transformation. There are some moments of reminding ourselves to stay rooted, stay grounded, not necessarily be reactionary, but to make refinements and alignments in our actions. And so this, I guess I'll just close with healing through honest, heartfelt expression, as well as taking action, but taking action from a space where we are grounded and empowered. So staying grounded as our mind opens up, discerning which thoughts are true, not just which ones are the loudest or the scariest or the most noisy or the most habitual, which ones feel true. And can we move? Can we still move? We can move and be grounded as well as we don't have to just react to intensity. I offered a meditation at the end of the podcast for Uranus moving into Gemini that I think is really wonderful this week. But I will also offer a meditation here next, as I like to do every Sunday. So have a wonderful, blessed week. Take good care, and I will see you soon.